Okay, welcome in our weekly class of 3 Days to Awakening. And yeah, welcome to that remembrance that we are living in the resurrection. And it is really now our responsibility how to extend that has been given us, and how to share this experience of the gifts of God, of our own awakening with all of ourselves, right? And that means that we are not hiding anywhere, but we are literally out there in the dream, in smack in our own fabrications that we made up, and and enjoy to have become fearless of fear, fearless of this, all these reflections of, let's say, of a mind that was completely separated from its source, and out of that insanity of not having, believing not having access to its source, which is the mind of God, of just dreaming and making up more and more dream, and making up more images, how to find the solution, how to solve the problem, and of course also to increment and make up more evidence of the problem or increase the problem, apparently, by maybe even good means to find the solution therein. And of course, we haven't succeeded in that, and finally have given up to assert our own solution, assert our own will, assert our own ideas of how to bring the solution to ourselves, to our neighbors, to our brothers, to the world. And once we have exerted all our own ideas and solutions, then we became willing to listen to the voice that speaks for God, to a voice that is representing that guidance from out of time. And it is the voice of Jesus Christ, or the voice of the Holy Spirit, or call it the voice of any awakened mind, that directs you to actions of mind, that you don't no longer stay on the timeline and look no longer on the timeline for a result, but become fully content and satisfied in what and how you experience yourself, by simply letting things be as they are. And this is an incredible idea that Jesus Christ offers us in his Course in Miracles, a Course in Miracles that is that voice and that message given from out of time. And if you just drop in here completely fresh and new and have never heard anything of A Course in Miracles, well, you will hear how in a new way of seeing, in an activity of changing your own perspectives, your own thoughts, and therefore you have a change of perception, which means you do and are capable of seeing things differently. And then, of course, your experience with everyone and everything in the world starts to change. And it starts to change towards peace of mind, peace inside yourself. And that peace that has really no boundaries and cannot be fenced off, like the idea of the body as being a fence against what, how Jesus expresses it in this introduction of this sequence of lessons. We are doing here a daily lesson of 365 lessons And within that sequence of 10 days between lesson 261 and 270, Jesus answers to the question, what is the body? And you could also, of course, ask, what is the world I see? Or you could ask, what am I as a limited thought form, as a personality that comes and goes? That is all projected and seen and reflected as your body. And he says right in the beginning that it is a fence that the Son of God imagines that he has built, that he has made up in his mind to separate parts of this of his self from other parts, to separate something that is whole, that is one, that is within itself a complete and a perfect oneness of self, let's say. And so, in that imagination, in that hallucination that you, as the Son of God, had to separate some part, some fragment out of that whole, that is really the reason that you see bodies now. And that is the idea of body being a fence. And now that limitation needs to be converted and has to become something usable, something alternative, something valuable that we can use for our return home, for our awakening from the dream. And we want to arrive at the clarity, and this is exactly how it is offered through A Course in Miracles. Every word, every sentence, every lesson offers that same thing. To acknowledge there is a medium given us, a medium, a device given us in which we can orchestrate our return home in new experiences of joy, of happiness, of love, of forgiveness. And so we have to arrive after we clearly see the evidence of the meaning given to the body, that all we see are just dream images. And so, of course, you as the dreamer of the dream, you as the maker of the dream in which you find yourself and you see. And so you also in your identification with a body or believing to be in a body is a dream. And that dream, like all other dreams, it sometimes seems to picture happiness, but can quite suddenly revert to fear. And this is the human experience. And now, in a utilization of a new means, a new device, you do no longer need to go into the fear again, to retrieve, revert your picture of happiness into a picture, an image of fear. You can stay in a consistency of the peace of God experienced within yourself. And so stay in a recognition of your true self, no matter where you find yourself and with whom you join and whom you meet and see. And so to accept the body as a means becomes the acceptance of the means in order to enter a true communication, a communication in mind, as mind, and between minds. In other words, what bodies do or not do no longer really means anything and plays a role in that. The moment the mind entertains, trains his mind, and starts to accept that it is all about mind and it all happens in mind, and it is mind that wakes up from the dream, and it is mind that recognizes itself as one mind, as divine mind, as the mind of God. Of course, that type of mind is capitalized and is no longer that idea of the thinking faculty of thinking meaningless thoughts, of being involved and absorbed with past thoughts and past experiences. But that is the mind in alignment with the truth, the mind in alignment with thoughts that come from out of time, with how this support and translator, we would say, what we call the Holy Spirit, thinks for us. And so, in that alignment, you literally become Holy Spirit thinking. So, the body is the means by which God's Son, again, you return to sanity. Yeah, it is finally transformed from the notion of birth to death, of being subject to destruction, to sickness, to growing old and annihilation. It is reverted now and transformed, you could say, to the body of Christ, to Christ's body. That would be the recognition of light in the mind. Christ's body is a body of light. And he adds on that though it was made to fence him into hell without escape, yet has the goal of heaven been exchanged for the pursuit of hell. And the Son of God extends his hand to reach his brother, to help him walk along the road with him. And now is the body holy. Now it serves to heal the mind that it was made to kill. See, you want a holy body, but you cannot really have it without changing your perspective and changing those thoughts of meaning that you have given the body in connection with past thoughts of sickness and death. But you can only see that this is your nature in already accepting that the body is only a device on your way home to communicate, and in that restoration of communication, to recognize the truth of yourself. And therefore, it is no longer subject to death. And it's not that what you consider body as a material structure, as an atomic structure, will not change and of course disintegrate, disappear into the nothingness. Of course, that is happening because any idea that is based on a limited thought form and is still named or given a meaning will change and will disappear. But it is really then where you recognize, okay, that what I previously were identifying myself is now an experience of holiness and wholeness within my mind. And that is the only sane use of the idea of the body as a device. And this is what Jesus teaches you in his Course in Miracles. And this is why I'm teaching a Course in Miracles, because finally I could see this is something different. This is not just acknowledging, okay, the body is nothing and everything is completely rejected on all thought forms, but it is really letting yourself be where you are. I didn't need to change anything where I found myself with my belief systems and with my thoughts. And Jesus took me by the hand and just offered me here an alternative, offered me a means to experience myself, and so you and the entire world in a new way, in a different way. So thank you. Thank you for sharing with me these incredible recognitions that are given in this Course in Miracles. And as I was already mentioning, this is quite a learning process. If you mean that and you're going to arrive at the lesson, let all things be exactly as they are, because that includes that remembrance and recognition. I do not need to change any of the illusionary images in my mind. What I need to change are my thoughts about them. And my letting all things be exactly as they are is an expression of my trust that the truth is already here. And if the truth is present and here, then I'm not lost, right? Because that is from where we are coming from. The idea of being lost. And of course, there are really funny stories about from time to time, and not just dramatic and tragical occurrences when somebody is lost, or then the entire world is focused on finding one person who is maybe involved in a disappearance of a, or the death of a person, as it happens right now in the news. But it is really the idea of being lost from one's true state of mind, from heaven itself, from home. And that being lost is the idea of being lost from God's mind and from that connection with your Creator. And so every human being initially has suffered upon this premise or this insane perspective of loss. And if we look a little bit towards demonstrations of how that looks like in in a joyful way, in a way where it becomes a joke, it could look like what just happened last week in Iceland, where a bus of tourists were traveling through Iceland and stopped at a canyon in the wilderness. And very soon it was announced that one woman was missing. And actually, that woman was, while that became an issue, she was changing her clothes. So nobody could see her, and nobody knew her anyway because it was a bus of tourists. But there was a description of her. And when she came back from the changing room or wherever she was and heard the description, which woman is missing, and everybody immediately joined and said, let's look for her. And they spread out into the wilderness. And so she did not recognize that the description was about her. And already here, I want to make that emphasis. A human being does not recognize the description of himself, neither within the illusionary images that make up the person, nor actually the description when it is about wholeness and who the Son of God really is. So you hear what you hear, you see what you see. And so she did not correlate that or everybody else were missing her. It was really just the idea there of the description who that person is. And so she joined the search. So she was literally searching for herself. And that went on and on for hours. And it was already by 3 a.m. in the morning that the search was called off, or it was clarified that the woman was actually part of the search team searching for herself. And I really like this story. Thank you, Joby, for sending me that article in which it was. I'm sure it happened. It really happened. But it just shows me how, on the conceptual level, how there is no understanding. There is not really a correlation, because it needs that restoration of true communication. And only the restoration of true communication will also restore our recognition that now we are in communication. And it is a communication of knowing ourselves perfectly well. And if maybe just one person within this entire search team would have applied that lesson that we are doing right now, let all things be exactly as they are, maybe they would have been still for an instant together in a circle of light. And maybe they would have started laughing all together, and then realizing that the idea of a person being missing is not missing at all. And that would be the remembrance the Son of God is still at home, is still in heaven. He has not really left his home and went off in order to experience himself like the prodigal son in innumerable ways of limitations and separation. And so, even if we believe that or imagine that, hallucinate that, it is still a fact that we are perfectly whole and holy in His mind, which is our abode, in which we rest forever, because we only rest in God, and only there is our security. And we cannot be missed or missing, because we, in that recognition of being home, of course, we have plenty of opportunity. And in fact, it is always just one instant at a time in which we realize, yes, this is true. I'm at home and you are at home with me, brother. I recognize you as myself. How could you be somewhere else? Not possible. So in the lesson, it's the lesson 268, let all things be exactly as they are. Jesus started to teach us through the form of prayer that we are willing, and we ask for help today, to not hold any judgment, any limited thought form, any idea of being missing against our Creator, against God Himself. And so it starts, let me not be your critic, Lord, today, and judge against you. And even the expression of being His critic, or being capable of criticizing God, isn't really a possibility, isn't really possible at all. But we are asking for help because we have made up a thought system in opposition to God's mind or to our experience with Him. And that, what we call the ego thought system, serves perfectly well to always remind the mind of separation, of a myriad of different possibilities and meanings. And so, of course, also of the limitations within one's own experience, held onto and shared over thousands and thousands of years of being a mortal body. So once we do no longer judge him and hold judgment and critique against the source of our being, we are entering into an acceptance of perfection, wholeness, holiness. And he continues in the lesson with another expression of help me, help, let me not attempt to interfere with your creation and distort it into sickly forms. Those are the sickly forms, those meanings from the past, limitations. Let me be willing let me be willing. Here's an expression of accepting the help and strength of God's mind to be willing to withdraw my wishes from its unity and thus to let it be as you, Father, created it, as God created it. And thus will I be able to recognize myself, my true self, as you created me. In love was I created. In love will I remain forever. What can frighten me when I let all things be exactly as they are? What are they exactly? Love. So nothing can threaten you, nothing can frighten you when you let all things, all your images of your mind, all your thoughts be love. And so it becomes a very natural action of mind to recognize yourself. Let not our sight be blasphemous today, nor let our ears attend to lying tongues. Only reality is free of pain. So he's giving us a few sentences by strengthening that it is only reality that is free of pain, that it is only reality that is free of loss, right? And the feeling of being lost, and it is only reality that is wholly safe. And this is only this that we seek today. Beautiful expressed, it is a very singular thought, a directive towards singular self recognition. And that is really what this entire mind training of A Course in Miracles has as its purpose, and will in every single lesson direct us to to have a direct experience of it, to know that as being ourselves, as being true. Well, before we're gonna go here into a few paragraphs of 3 days to awakening and look at day one, uh, because this is the idea of looking for a way out of here. This is exactly what we were just speaking in connection with the lesson and the introduction of this sequence. I'm looking for a way out of here as long as I'm ignorant that I'm already out of here. And so, of course, every notion of being imprisoned in a body or in a world needs that alignment of thought and mind towards recognizing the truth. And so we are using the lesson of the day for that. And we are using a moment of silence in order to remember what it really is and what has been really given us. Let's just be quiet for a few seconds, okay? Thank you. Wonderful song. Thank you so much. Up the road, brother Mitch and friends. Yeah, and right from there we might just review where we left it the last time in this 3 days to awakening and being in this section of dreaming the awakening. dreaming you out of here and having arrived at the real nature of your mind beyond any state. And so we said that no matter what you try, that the fact is that you do not know, that you do not exist as a conceptual mind. And that is why you make effort to evolve from the perceiver, a perceiver of an insane world or a world in separation that is attacking you or that is keeping you here, or that, as I said, is imprisoning you in your own mind, to a transcended impersonal being that resides in a spiritual dream world. And so we said that doesn't work. That doesn't really work either. No? So we have an offer given from Christ mind, Christ Jesus, to accept that one man for ourselves. That means to really have a direct view, a look once more at all our thought forms, and not try to just go into transcendence through means of meditation, prayer, whatever. But it is about the conversion of thoughts. And transcendence has really nothing to do with conversion. It just puts the mind into a tranquil, quiet state. And that might be very helpful in moments or in certain sequences within your transformation, what you call your transformation, or a moment of changing your mind. But in fact, it is the ego's attempt to avoid and escape that change of mind, that conversion of thoughts. And it is you might have experienced that, the attempt to slow it down, and to slow it down basically just to a perception of nothingness in time and space. But nothingness in time and space is not really nothingness as fullness, as everything that creation is. And that is the truth. Without arriving, or unless you arrive at an experience of fullness of Christ light, let's say, in all of what you call your world, that includes yourself, you are still active in the conversion of your mind. So the quality of all thought forms, of all expressions, is essentially one and the same energy. They only differ in the way that you want to see them, how much use or gain you derive from them, and what choices you make for experiencing their effects. But thoughts associated with a meaning of something are what the rising and moving ego I represents. That's where we left it the last time, and which, out of its tendency as are generated by your beliefs, creates a new story, a new movie, a new dream, and imagines a beginning and an end, as well as a result and a fictitious purpose, a purpose that is also limited and fictitious. And all these are again but part of the dream movie. You're dreaming here. You are the dreamer of the dream. And therefore, the invitation given by Jesus is, wake up, Holy Son of God. Wake up from your dreams of fictitious purposes, like just kind of how you would actually make up stories and then try to sell them as real. And we know that this is very common these days in those circles of conspiracies. That's exactly what the mind then tries to express himself in a creative way, but still on the timeline, right? And it is still bound in time and space, and therefore it stays fictitious. It stays a storyline. It stays something that has an objective reality and has still the storyteller or the I thought that says, and I'm the authority to tell you that this is true. And we see it in all these expressions around vaccination, around the virus, and around so many other things. And it becomes a kind of, I see it as a game within the conceptual ego mind until that is exerted enough and an experience as, okay, this doesn't serve me anymore. This is just too small for me. Or, yes, okay, this is just a joke, but nobody also says this is a joke. It's taken very seriously. And therefore, it's a better suggestion to just stop that. And that means to start with myself, to stop to listen to that, to stop to think about that or chew that over, to stop to even discuss that, because it still is and remains completely meaningless. So concerns, attachments, desires, and their related troubles consequently have to be met, since you always get the result of your own thoughts. And this is the involvement of the ego, that you stay in the loop, you stay in the loop of that game and proceed to death. You get the results of your own thoughts. Do not forget that. And so that would literally keep you here. Right? So there are no exceptions, though these thought forms are differently experienced. For example, self-evident actions that are daily performed by the body, such as satisfying your hunger, thirst, everything that is part of body activity. And any spontaneous arising action seen in this present moment are experienced as impersonal, though it could not be performed without the ego I. It needs always that I thought, that sense of I, that sense of an existing personality in order to perform those actions. Do not forget that. And this is what the mind training does. It brings us literally back to that recognition of, oh, this occurs in me. I'm doing that. I'm doing this to myself. I am believing that. It's the I that believes it. It's the I that is thinking about in a limited way. Therefore, we are guided towards the recognition and then an experience what that I really is. And so first it is innumerable encountering the limited thought forms and the limitation of that I, until we really meet it as a form of person or if a sense of I is really here. And that opens us up then to the connection, to the light of our mind, creative light, to what Christ is in us and as us. And then the real ball game starts. Everything before that is just set in limitation. And you can also look that this is applied perfectly well on the esoteric spiritual level. There are uncountable ways of expressions, particularly expressions of worship, worshiping God, worshiping Jesus Christ, worshiping in India, they're worshiping whatever gods, but never really looking at the one who is the worshipper. And so it is always about the objective reality of, oh, it's about Jesus, right? And all those songs are about Jesus, and Jesus, it's about him, and he is in the center, and so on and so forth. And there's never a self-inclusion there. There's never the acceptance that Jesus only exists as me, as you right now. If there is such a thing as a true resurrection, right? So as long as you stay in the worship and doing the thing out there with him and at him, you can overlook perfectly well that it is not about you. And this is where we are running literally into the results of our own concept of the self, the limited way of thinking of ourselves. And of course, there's just a very small way towards, oh, I'm a body, I'm identified with the body. In, and it is only by bringing that together, not letting that cause of light of creation be separate any longer from the effect that you are, that I am. Yeah, we are eternally an effect of God. We are exactly the same. And it's not about really going around and saying, hey, I'm the same as Jesus Christ. It's about that action of mind and experiencing that oneness and seeing that there is no God out there. There is no Christ or Jesus out there, neither to be worshipped nor as a teacher or as those are all the idols we put outside ourselves. So, as I said, they could not be performed without this ego I sense or this sense of I being separate. And because of this sense of impersonality, especially spiritual circles, they love that. In Eastern circles, even more than in the Western, of this sense of impersonality, which means it has nothing to do with me. It's all just God given me, and God that it has never anything to do with them. But this sense of impersonality that is not directly associating the action with the past or future, these instinctive thought forms are not primarily related with guilt and therefore considered as less problematic. And therefore they are attractive in the offering, because it's not, you don't run immediately into your guilt. But in fact, they do undergo a full conversion. They are undone also completely. And a full conversion, which means that you also come to know and to realize that your resurrection is physical, right? You're basically thrown to your own cellular memory. And no matter how you experience it, if you experience it on a cellular level or if you're experiencing it as an effect of your body identification, you will not leave a decaying corpse here, right? You will not ascend to heaven and then you leave still a body here. That will not happen. And performing kind of, I expressed it as robot-like acts or being dead as the dream yourself, as you dream yourself out of here and live forever, ascending home to your Father. To be fully yourself, right? Now we are talking about recognizing the true self. Everything is possible for you, every action or non-action, because of the nature of your wholeness. We already made emphasis of that and used also the lesson of the day. Because of the nature of the oneness that you are sharing with everything and everyone. Wholeness, oneness. And as that, brother, as that you are experiencing yourself as already fulfilled, and therefore will not find a reason to move from the thought of God to a temporary or transient so-called creation or fabrication of your mind of a new movie, right? Of course, you have the power to make up some new movie, unless you want to prolong and remake an illusory, fictitious world appearance reflecting your ideas of death. And that, of course, would be the deep sense of needing to be here, needing to experience yourself in time space as somebody, as something. And in truth, this world is over and gone a long time ago. There is no world. If this is true, and I guarantee you from my own experience that it is, then you cannot die either. The message of the resurrection of Jesus Christ that I'm extending to you right now is exactly this. This world, including yourself, is already saved and home in heaven. You are doing this unto yourself, and it is this you would undo. Those are the sentences that Jesus gives us in the Course in Miracles. Right? The world, including yourself, is already saved, and home in heaven, you are doing this unto yourself, and it is this you would undo. Yeah, great, wonderful. Well, I might just here touch a little bit out of chapter 3, section 7, where in regard to the Bible, Jesus clarifies it all in the Course in Miracles this way by saying, we have discussed the fall or separation before, but its meaning must be clearly understood without symbols. The separation is not symbolic. It is an order of reality or a system of thought that is perfectly real in time, though not in eternity. All beliefs are real to the believer. The fruit of only one tree was forbidden to man in his symbolic garden, but God could not have forbidden it, or it could not have been eaten. If God knows his children, and I assure you he does, would he have put them in a position where their own destruction was possible? Well, of course not. No? The tree which was forbidden was correctly named the tree of knowledge. Yet God created knowledge and gave it freely to his creations. You see, in the dream, it became the forbidden tree. From God, extended as a gift, it was the tree of knowledge. God created knowledge and gave it freely to his creations. The symbolism here is open to many interpretations, but you may be sure that any interpretation which perceives either God or his creations as if they were capable of destroying their own purpose, and here it is wrong. It's just simply an error. You're still not sinful because you did that, but it is wrong. It is erroneous. Destroying your own true purpose. Your own true purpose is to arrive at knowledge, to know thyself, to know who you are. And therefore, you will need and are eating right now from that tree of knowledge. And eating of the tree of knowledge is a symbolic expression of, here's the interpretation of Jesus, incorporating into the self the ability for self-creation. This is the only sense in which God and his souls are not co-creators, incorporating into the self the ability of self-creation. The belief that they are is implicit in the self-concept, a concept now made acceptable by its weakness and explained by a tendency of the self to create an image of itself. Its fear aspect is usually ascribed to the father figure, a particularly interesting idea in view of the fact that nobody means the physical father by the term. It refers to an image of a father in relation to an image of the self. Once again, images are perceived, not known. Knowledge cannot deceive, but perception can. And we will leave it here for today and continue in the next episode. I was here reading, which basically corresponds to chapter 3, section 7, third and fourth paragraph. I'm using here the original version of the urtext, but you see where he goes with that. He shows us that images are perceived, and if you're making images, you are still a step away from knowledge. But knowledge cannot deceive. So you, as the Son of God, you no longer want to deceive yourself. So that means you have to get out of perception, because perception, yes, can deceive. And you have deceived yourself since the beginning of time, and that deception has just strengthened your identification in a body and as a body. And so your whole dream became very real, and you believed you're part of the dream, and you believed that you, as the dreamer of the dream, is real, and you believed that your dream objects, your dream figures are real. Now we live in the reversal of that erroneous perception, of that erroneous thinking. Thank you, my beloved ones. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're sharing this with me. We are just a few more sounds before we just go out of here with complete peace and light experience in our mind. I love you with all my heart. You have a most, most wonderful day, evening, morning, wherever you are, whenever you listen to this voice speaking of your awakening. 3 days, 3 actions of mind to awakening. Bye bye.
I can see